up the game of Dragon's Hoard, first, set up the game area. To do this, first remove the 5 reference cards, which say reference on the top, and also the start card, which says start on the top. Then, shuffle the remaining cards, and place them in the middle of the playing area, with the sheep side face up. Place the top 4 cards of the deck, sheep side up, next to the main deck. These 4 cards are known as the field. After setting up the game area, each player will set up their individual player area. To set up each player's area, first, deal each player 4 cards from the main deck. Each player may look at their cards, but should keep them secret from other players. Each player will also be dealt 1 reference card. On the back of the reference cards are hints for the game. The player to the left of the dealer will also be given the start card, and they will become the start player. After setting up the game area and each player's area, they are ready to start the game. During the game of Dragon's Hoard, players take turns drawing cards and playing cards in an attempt to score the most points. Each player's turn consists of 3 phases. The first step of each player's turn will consist of a player drawing cards. They may either draw cards from the top of the main deck or any of the 4 cards in the field. If they draw a card from the field, they will immediately replace it with the top card from the main deck. When a player draws their cards, they will not look at them until they have completed drawing all of their cards. The number of cards a player draws depends on the number of players in the game. In a 2-player game, players will draw 2 cards. If they start their turn with fewer than 4 cards in their hand, they will draw 3 cards. In a 3- or 4-player game, players will always draw 3 cards, regardless of how many cards they have in their hand. While drawing cards, if no player draws a card from the 4 cards in the field for an entire round, players may choose to discard the entire field and replace all 4 cards. All players in the game must agree to this step for this to happen. After a player has completed their draw phase, they will move on to the second phase of their turn, the play phase. During the play phase, a player will use up to 2 actions or pass. There are 2 possible actions. The first is to play an action card from your hand. Action cards will always have a symbol rather than a number on the top left corner. Let's take a look at the different possible action cards. The Angry Mob card forces all other players in the game to discard half of the cards in their hand, rounded down. The Knight card may be used to skip any other player's turn. The same player may not be skipped 2 turns in a row. The Thief may be used to steal 2 cards from any one player of their choice. When stealing cards, the player will choose their opponent's cards by only looking at the sheep side. The Battle card can be played by any player to protect them from an Angry Mob card, a Knight card, or a Thief card. For instance, if a player played an Angry Mob card, another player could discard a Battle card and protect their hand from having half of its cards discarded. The Battle card only protects the player who played it, so all other players would still have to discard half of their cards. The Wizard card may be played with the Angry Mob, Knight, or Thief card to make the card unstoppable. This way, even if a player had a Battle card which would normally stop the effect of an attack card, they would not be able to stop it. For instance, if a player played a Knight card and also played a Wizard with the Knight card, they could skip a player, and the player could not do anything about it. The Shepherd card is another action card. This card simply allows a player to draw 2 extra cards and add them to their hand. The Wild Sheep is the last action card. This card can be used in place of any other colored sheep in the game. This action card may be used while purchasing treasures. The second possible action in the game is to play 1 treasure card. Treasure cards will always have a number in the top left corner. There are 2 main types of treasure cards in each color: basic treasure cards and layer cards. Basic treasure cards will always have a number greater than 0 on them, and layer cards will always have 0 on them. The number on the card represents the number of points the treasure will gain them. Whenever a player wishes to play a basic treasure card from their hand, they must pay the cost of that card. The cost of a treasure card is found on the left side of the card. The number of symbols tells the number of sheep cards you need to pay for that card. Any sheep symbols in a particular color require a player to pay that amount of that colored sheep. For instance, this card requires 3 yellow sheep. This symbol requires a player to pay additional sheep of any color in the game. So to play the King's Treasure, the player would have to pay 3 yellow sheep and 1 additional sheep of any color in the game. When the player pays for their treasure card, they may pay with any type of cards, as long as they have the correct amount of cards they need for that treasure. So this player has the 3 yellow sheep and the 1 additional sheep of any color. Any sheep card used to pay will be placed into the discard pile, and any treasure cards played will be placed face up in that player's area. The other type of treasure card is a lair card. When a player plays a lair card, they will simply place it face up in their player area. Lair cards do not require any sheep to play. If a player plays any treasure cards in their lair, they will gain points at the end of the game, which will be explained later. If a player plays a lair card after playing their initial treasure cards, they will simply place the lair card beneath the other treasure cards. A player may only play up to 1 lair card in each color. In a 3-player game, players are only allowed to play a total of 3 lairs during the game. In a 4-player game, players are only allowed to play 2 lairs in their player area. During a player's turn, they are only allowed to use each of the actions 1 time, so they may play up to 1 action during their turn, and play up to 1 treasure card by paying its cost, or they may play 1 lair card for free. A player is never allowed to play a lair card and a basic treasure card in the same turn. After a player has finished their play phase, they will move on to the final phase, the discard phase. The final step of a player's turn is to count the cards remaining in their hand. If they end their turn with more than 10 cards, they must choose cards in their hand to discard to get them back down to 10 cards. After a player discards if necessary, the next player in clockwise order will take their turn, and play will continue in clockwise order. When a player plays their 10th treasure card, the end of the game is triggered. It should be noted that lair cards do not count towards the 10 cards. In a 4-player game, players will only play to 8 treasure cards instead of 10. When the end of the game is triggered, the round will continue to completion, so each player will get an equal amount of turns in the game. When the game is over, final scoring will occur. To complete final scoring, each player will add up the value of their treasure cards. To do this, they will add up the value in the top left corner of each card. After counting up the number value on their treasure cards, they will score points for any lairs they played. Lair cards are scored based on the number of matching colored treasure cards played in that particular lair. A player that played 1 card in their lair would score 1 additional point. For 2 cards, they would score 3 points. For 3 cards, they would score 6 points. And for 4 cards, they would score an additional 10 points. After each player has added up their points, the player who ends the game with the most points is declared the winner.